So I don't know all of you, so I would assume you wouldn't necessarily know all of us. So this
Oh,
is Kate
okay.
Harris.
Sorry.
This is Colleen Masson, and I'm Jasmine Martin. And we've all either dabbled or really dunked fully into doing some canning. My first year dunking into it was 2022. I think I canned possibly about 160 jars of food. And it slowed down.
Was it successful?
There's mixtures.
Yeah.
I've definitely learned some things. So I've had, with COVID, canning definitely became extremely popular. With that, your local grocery store did not have things available like your canning lids that you only use typically one time. So then you go onto Amazon and you go to look. So I bought a box that has 200 lids. They're made in China and they buckle and they don't hold their seal. So I've got lids that I've also done either those or something else that I've gotten 50% to succeed. There are some changes that have happened to ones that have been good. Like Pure is one I've had 50+% success with. This one I have had some of them buckle with. But like the typical ball used to be very high quality and it's changed. You can actually look at the seal, little blue or pinkish kind of looking rim, and it has gotten extremely thin, so it barely seals. So lids like Denali and Superb, and also our local Amish, will actually sell lids that actually will have a better wax to them, that will have a way higher success rate. That usually they'll only fail if you do something wrong.
Never.
So yeah, I've definitely gone through personally a lot of learning through mistakes. I've had water filled over the water bath and it looked like tomatoes when you opened it up, because you went, oh, something wrong, and it either siphoned or it busted the jar, maybe because I heated it up so stinking fast it rattled like crazy, and then the jar went and popped. So what I want to do to start off with is, why don't we share a few things that we have canned. We have some here that we have to show. So this at the very least gives some ideas. So Colleen, what did you bring?
Well, I canned white beans with ham. It's just onions, carrots, ham, and the beans. And it was so easy. You just layer it and then can it.
So is this like a soup?
It's a soup, like
okay,
beans.
so it's ready to
You
go.
know, you
open
buy
it
that
up,
Campbell's bean and
soup.
bacon soup. It kind of tastes like that. Yeah.
And I would presume you pressure canned
I
that.
pressure canned that.
And the reason for that, of course, is it needs to be the low acid. If it's a low acid food, then it needs to be cooked in a pressure canner, typically, or at least that's generally what is highly encouraged.
Yeah, you can do it without it being in a pressure canner, but it will take a very, very long time in a water bath.
Hey, Kate, can you speak
Hours.
up a little? Yeah.
Hours. Yes, ma'am.
Can you all speak up?
Yep.
I'm lost.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't can. I've never canned. My dad canned. My grandmother canned. I never canned.
But you can.
I
That's what the book says. You
But
can.
I heard what you said you put in it. Do you cook that first before you put it in your jar, before you seal it? What,
No, not that soup. It was
Yeah.
so easy.
You
Dry
put it
beans.
straight in.
It was dry beans.
Dry beans
Layer onions, layer carrots, and then your ham.
and your
Like
broth.
I think I bought at Aldi's, it was like cut up ham
Yeah.
pieces. I just threw some of that in, but then I used, and some people say, I'm not using that pig's feet. Like I would cook
Yeah.
the pig's feet.
I use all that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I love it. It tastes great. Yeah, and it's pretty cheap.
So then you
cheaper
fill it
than-
up with what, fluid, water?
Yeah. I mean, I can,
Not everything do you have to put water in. but you can. Some
Like-
things you don't need to.
Like when you can chicken, you cut up the chicken pieces, shove it in the jar, put a teaspoon of salt, and pressure can it, and it makes its own broth inside.
Wonderful.
And when you cook chicken, you'll always find there's all of a sudden this clear liquid around it.
Yeah.
So when you're canning the chicken that you refer to as dry packed, inside of there, it ends up making its own juices, just like if you were to cook it in the oven and such, will end up making juices. You all, what?
Putting the raw chicken in the jar?
Raw
Correct.
chicken.
If you have enough time of very hot heat that is cooking, it comes out cooked when you are
Do you wanna
finished
see
with your
something
can.
that's that? I'll show you.
Yeah. Like here.
Now, I don't have the chicken,
No.
but I have deer meat.
Okay.
I hear that's very
she can
good that
find
way,
it.
I've never done
And what, we're looking at these pressure cookers, these are like pressure, almost like a pressure, it's a canning cooker, right? Like, you put the
This is
jar
a,
in.
this is
This is a
pressure.
pressure canner, this is a pressure
pressure.
canner, this is a pressure
I'm
canner.
gonna say this too, when growing up, we had chickens, laying chickens, and they would get old, so we would butcher them, and mom and dad, we would can them, because tough, when a chicken gets old, it's tough.
It's tough.
The meat is wonderful, so nothing was wasted with the chicken.
That juice came from itself.
That is, what is that?
This is deer meat.
That's deer meat.
And I used a jar of it a couple weeks ago, and I just,
You're just gonna push it out.
Yeah.
I used it a
Gotcha.
couple
There
weeks
you
ago.
go.
I used it a couple weeks ago, and normally if you have ever made deer meat, sometimes you have to do some things to make it tender, right?
Yeah.
So I got this out, and it's so tender that I could barely bread it. I wanted to make like beef parmesan, you know, like chicken parmesan,
Yeah.
except deer meat,
It fell apart.
and it was wanting to fall apart. I didn't bake it. I just did the breading thing and put sauce on top of it, and it was wonderful. So it's kind of like your instant food. This stuff that's in here, it's done. You know,
Yeah.
you're
Would
done.
you buy canned tuna and canned
Yeah.
chicken and canned beef, you know, at Walmart
Okay,
too,
okay,
and
I
that's
see,
an
I
instant
see,
open
I
and
see.
ready to eat.
And it would be
Yeah.
good
Safe.
over rice, like if you,
Uh-huh.
if you had rice,
Yeah.
put some over that, or
Cause
mashed
you put salt in it,
potatoes.
so it'd have a natural
Yeah.
flavor and saltiness to it.
Now, is that pressure cooked or
Yeah.
cold?
This one
Pressure
is.
can.
This one is. This is pressure. Yeah. Some
Now,
are.
there is a difference between a pressure cooker and a pressure canner.
Yeah,
So those are ones that are very common to get confused.
yeah.
If I'm making a meal right now, then I have the Instapot, and that's your pressure cooker,
Yeah.
I believe. Whereas a pressure canner is when you are taking something in a jar and you are getting
Putting
it
it
to
in that
seal for
Getting it,
storage.
putting it in
So you
the
cannot
cylinder.
use a pressure cooker to do pressure canning unless it's one that is a versatile option.
Like that one. Says pressure canner and cooker.
Right.
I guess it does, yeah.
Well,
But it's
I
not an
imagine for
instant
these
pot, it's
great
not
big
an
things,
instant
you
pot,
could
yeah.
use this as, if you wanted to pressure cook something for the church, you could do it in one of these things too. Why wouldn't you?
Right.
These, the littler ones, they're not gonna fit the jars, that's, you know,
Yeah.
that's gonna be your difference, so.
So explain how you do how do you do that?
How do you do this?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just explain what you go through to do that.
I got a basket. I got a basket of tomatoes, and I wanna make
Let me
tomato
show you,
sauce.
let me show you. Okay, so, here are green beans, right? So, these ones I dry packed, and these ones I didn't dry pack. No, this is just water and
Yeah.
salt. So, I went out and I picked my beans. I washed my beans, I snapped my beans,
Okay,
and then I shoved them in the jar.
okay.
As tightly organized as possible,
Uh-huh.
as
And
much as you can.
just because you don't want to have full jar once it cooks, right?
Right.
So, these ones taste a little beanier than these ones because I added water to this.
Right,
I think water promotes the seal because you take the water up to about here, and then when it cooks down, it comes down a little bit. And I just think there's less to seal in it. So I like the taste of these ones better, but I trust the life of these ones better. So
yeah.
anyway, and and they taste good, it's not they don't taste good, they taste more like
So you
stuff
got to the
Okay,
point
so
where
you got-
you
yeah.
shoved them in,
Yeah,
now you
I
put the
shoved them
lid
in,
on.
all right,
Yeah.
Tim, you know how I do it, you've been there,
No,
okay,
see,
so
I
they,
don't know how you
so,
do it.
so you shove them in there, an important thing,
Yeah.
okay, the important thing is that it has to be clean on the top. I've had little things stick out a little bit, like there's little tails, and then you put it on there and it doesn't seal, right?
Yeah, rotten
Or
meat.
it'll seal, but it'll
How do you know
unseal.
if it's sealed?
It has a little thing here in the middle, and you push down on it, and if it doesn't make a noise and pop, then it's sealed.
So this is brand new.
Usually,
This has not been used
And you
yet.
don't
usually I throw a towel
Right.
over my canned
You
beans.
can, there are
You can
some
hear
that you
go,
can use more
We'll
than
say
once.
once for now,
But for, yeah, and
And I don't know if you can hear
I
it,
have used
but this
them
makes a
more,
little
but-
popping sound ever so slightly when I push
Yeah.
on it. Hers that are sealed, she can pick them up by the lid itself. I'm not holding the jar, I'm holding just this lid. And it's on there so sealed well
Right.
that there's no popping bubble there, and it can hold the entire weight of the jar.
Are you supposed to screw the lid on when you're done, or no?
So, some people will save them stored with the lids on, and some of them will make a point in taking the lids off, because either way, you wanna make sure that you're not storing food that is not sealing and going bad. It's easier
That's
to
just like
tell
a
if you don't
secondary-
have the ring on.
I take it off, because if there's water in this,
rust.
it'll rust.
Yeah.
And rusty, these things, you have to
Yeah, I know.
replace them every once
So
in a while.
you screw the flat cap
Yeah, okay, so
on
here's,
with that.
so here's what you do, you
Okay.
put this stuff in it, you make sure that your thing is.
Your rim.
Your rim, thank you, your rim is clean,
Mhm.
and this stuff is hot generally, well, it doesn't always have to be hot, your directions will tell you, but you don't want, the main thing you don't want is you don't want cold something
Mhm.
in a hot something
Go
right
hot.
away. If you don't bring it up at the same time, then what happens is your jar will crack.
Right.
So, anyway, so you put your lid on, finger tight,
And then you boil them,
and then you can water bath them.
yeah.
Water bathing them, like in one of these pots, or it can be in any container, really. And you put it in there,
But it has to
and
be
it-
covered. The whole jar.
Yeah, only in a water bath.
In the water
So,
bath.
and when you do water bath canning, then this will go inside of here,
Nothing on the bottom?
and the
no,
water.
there's
This
a
This
thread.
one's best for a pint jar, so you can see this one barely
There we
is
go.
less than this,
Yeah.
okay?
Where's the bottom?
It has a rack in the
Yeah,
bottom.
there's
So
a
this
rack.
isn't quite enough space for this to do a super
Are the
good
lid.
job. So water bath canning, you fill the completely full of water, an inch at
Some of it.
least,
Okay.
An inch over top
over
of
the top of
the
the entire jar.
Okay.
You put hardly any water inside of a pressure canner.
Yeah, it depends on your canner, it'll tell you by this,
Direct from the
the
instructions.
direction book that comes with it, they'll tell you, like, I have two of them, and this one says 2 or 3 inches, and the other one says 2 quarts. And that's a different amount, actually, so
Yeah.
just read your instruction book, it tells you every step of the way,
Uh-huh.
every step to do. So, anyway, so then you put it all in there, and it'll tell you what pounds of pressure to put it at, and you'll have to vent it for a while to get a good head of steam going.
And what she means by venting is you don't
It's
have
this-
the weight on it. Where's your weight?
My weight's in there.
I always check the valve
Yeah.
there to make sure it's clear, like.
You don't want that to
Look
be
in the
clogged, clogged is not good, so I always
These are the
blow on
things you
it.
need to say.
Well, it's
Yeah.
in
It's
your
all in
book,
the book.
it's
Yeah.
in the book, and it doesn't have to be this beautiful canning book. This will give you recipes and different things. It comes with the thing. It comes with it. It tells you every little step to do. But, so
If
then,
you're a good reader, that's why.
Yeah,
we-
not everybody likes to read directions.
there's
It's the
YouTube.
last thing you do is read the book.
So then after you put all the jars in there, you get the water up to the right level, you vent it for a little bit, 7 minutes, I think, is generally what it is. And then it'll tell you put the, what do they call that thing, whatever, the weight, you put the weight on it, and it'll have a different
Isn't it called
poundage,
pepcock or something?
something like that. And it has different weights, mine, this one, has different weights on it, some of them don't, but what you do
Mine
is
doesn't.
you watch this little thing here, this thing will tell you how many pounds of pressure you're up to. So once you get up to the right number, you just turn your heat so it stays steady at that,
See,
for
mine-
however long they tell you, it could
Mine's
be
just
25
one
minutes.
weight.
Yeah.
I just have one weight
Yeah.
that goes on like
And,
that.
and I have one like
Rattle.
that, yeah, they rattle, and
Yeah.
I think that old pressure canners were different, that there was a certain sound, a certain rattle that they make at a certain
And that's what
temperature.
Well,
yours
my,
does.
that's, I have an old one, it's really old, but it will make a sound, and that's the sound you want. You don't want that solid shushing, because then you know you need to turn it down.
It's been too,
Yeah,
it's too hot. But you'll learn that just by doing it. Like mine, it starts making that sound, it's too hot. So the sound is like, okay, gotta get back and look at the temperature of that thing. And then, there's a long, people are afraid you're gonna blow up your canner. Okay, so if it's 10 pounds, that's way over here. Caution is way over here. So you got a long time. I don't leave my canner, like I don't go vacuum when I'm doing the canning. I'm in the same room. If you do that, you'll be just fine,
So why do
I
you
don't.
use that thing that you're holding in your hand?
This thing keeps the jars off the bottom so there don't get too much direct heat.
You get the direct heat, what happens?
They compress the jar,
The jars.
or, yeah.
How long does the pressure canner take compared to a water bath?
So let's just
One-
pick one
4
thing.
hours, isn't it?
It depends what you're doing.
Right, it depends on what you're doing.
Like,
So
I
like
think
if
green
you
beans
did,
might be,
like you could
Tomato.
do tomatoes and water bath or pressure canner, that's when you can go either way.
right.
So I'm trying to think what the length is in the water bath.
Tomatoes,
Tomatoes might, I
Oh,
would
they're
think,
quick.
yeah, they're
tells you
quick.
25 minutes pressure,
she's got it.
and boiling is, 85 minutes.
So 25
That's
minutes
if you
versus
do it that way,
85
I do it
minutes.
another whole different way, but, so just this thing here, then you put you put your lid on, you seal it down. This particular one, it doesn't have a gasket. These ones do. I love this one because my gasket's never gonna wear out because I don't have one, but,
And that's the seal. on
it's
the
the
inside.
seal thing, right? And so what happens occasionally, if you have an older one, you have to replace the seal. Unfortunately, when you figure that out is when you're in the middle of it and you don't wanna go to the
Yeah.
store. So you're trying to get the pressure up to a certain level and it's not going. And the reason is because you haven't made a seal. So that's happened to me a couple times and then, I got a different one. That doesn't have that, so anyway. And then there's a certain way to go down in pressure. You have your pressure for, say, 25 minutes, okay? So then the first step after that is, you turn
off
your
the
heat off.
Yeah.
And then it comes down to 0.
Very slowly.
Do you ever take it off? No, you take this thing off, so if there's any pressure left. Do not ever take this thing off until it's down to 0, because that quick change in temperature, that can be a problem. So you
And I've done
follow-
that.
You
I've been
follow your
impatient.
instructions. The other thing don't ever do, this is a big Kate fail, was I was tired, it was midnight, and I thought, I am turning that thing off and I am going to bed. So I did, I left this thing on, I went upstairs, I went to
You heard.
bed, nothing terrible happened like that, because I turned the heat off and it eventually went all the way down. Except I burnt my applesauce. The applesauce looked perfect and it tasted so burnt, it was terrible. So do what they say, if you do what they say, you'll be fine.
Why did it burn?
Why did it burn?
It stayed
It
hot.
stayed hot too
Too
long.
long.
It kept cooking.
It did, I needed to get it out of there.
Even though it was off, you know you turned the heat off.
I turned the heat off, but the heat didn't come down, because eventually you take the jars out. When it comes down to 0, you take the jars out and let them sit with a towel.
And when you take that weight off, you lose a lot more hotness. So because she never took that off, like she basically did like what you're hoping a really good ice cooler for going to the beach is gonna do of keeping the ice around it cold for like hours and hours and hours.
That's
She
what I
just,
did.
she kept that hot cooking for hours and hours and hours.
So I
So,
burned it.
so once I get these out of my, when I pull them out,
Uh-huh.
what do I put them on? Nice granite, thing?
I put mine on a towel personally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you definitely put towels over the top of them and you put the jars really close to each other
So they
because
cool
you don't
down.
want that sudden heat change to happen. So
Right.
they're all nice and
Warm,
close
cozy.
and chummy with each other.
All about the
I just,
temperature,
I know.
Slowly.
doing things together at the same time. You don't want your jars cold and your food hot. You don't want your food going in cold and then you turn it up real fast, you know. I'm not
I've
saying
done
you
that
have to heat things up. It's gotta be the same or your jars will break. But I've never had a jar break.
Well, and mine don't necessarily break, but they'll siphon. So
Meaning I'll suck
change.
everything inside the.
So the change of the from the cold to the hot so fast. I've had my tomato sauce or something, even with it being hand tightened and all that. The change makes go like that from the cold to the hot. So then all of a sudden you go, my water is tomato, and I have a half a jar in there because half of it has siphoned out,
In and out.
despite of it being that. And that was my impatience.
How do you get the jars out if everything's hot with an oven?
So this.
Special tool.
Tongs.
Yeah.
So this is
I have
special
that.
design
Oh,
just
that's
for being able to go around the bottom of the rims
Yeah.
and picking it up, and you're not having to touch it at all.
You don't touch it.
And I had to buy a new one because my silicone dissolved right off of one side, and it would go like this and then go like that and slip. And it really needs to have that silicone on it.
How do you sterilize the jars beforehand?
Oh, good question.
There's a couple ways. There's a couple ways.
You make your youngest child wash them, which is why I don't.
I have actually put them in the water bather and let the water, let this warm up with all of the water that needed to be in there inside the jars, and the jars are warming up inside of that.
Kinda like baby bottles.
That's one way I.
Yeah, I was just
You
gonna
can
say,
put
just
them in
like
the
you did
oven.
baby bottles.
You can put them in the oven. I've done that, like at 200 degrees.
Like
Which is
baby
rebel
bottles.
canning, cause it's not.
I'm
recommended.
sorry, it's not recommended, but I do it because it's faster.
I mean dry?
Yeah.
Or with just no
Correct.
water?
And that's not recommended. It's not recommended to put a dry jar inside of the oven because it gets way hotter than if it's wet. So we refer these things that we've learned and passed down, and they've decided is unsafe as rebel canning. So she has learned this new word as we've been talking about this.
Yeah.
She goes, I
I
guess
guess
I'm
that's
rebel.
Hey, you're a rebel.
I didn't know, but I
Yeah,
am.
rebel.
It's more like old fashioned.
Yeah,
Well, that-
a lot of the stuff that I learned from my mom and then from my mother-in-law. She's not my mother-in-law, she's my sister-in-law. And it was the way I did it before I read anything about it. So, like, another way to can tomatoes, you cannot do this with much else, but with tomatoes, you don't have to use a canner at all. You can water bath, or you can do this. But what I do for at least some of my tomatoes, I hot pack them. And what that means is you take your tomatoes, you cook them however you wanna cook them. They're hot, they're boiling, and they boil until the foam comes off. And once the foam comes off, then you
Put them right in.
put them right in the jar, and you little bit of a headspace. Of course, your jar lids have to be very clean. You have to wipe everything off, make sure it's sterile, and then you tighten it, and that's it.
And if these
And
are
it seals.
hot,
They're canned hot like that.
Yeah.
and that's why they give you this, so then you
Yeah.
can pick it up with a magnet out of the hot
But back to
water or
that, Kate,
whatever.
only like high acid, like
High
tomatoes,
acid
tomatoes or
things, right.
jellies, you
And
can
you
do that
ha-
with jellies,
you-
or pickles sometimes, right?
You have to be careful with your new tomatoes. If they have low acid, don't do that. Don't do that. In fact, some of the tomatoes that you're not sure of, they're telling you now to put a teaspoon of vinegar in with your teaspoon of salt. You put salt
Or
in
your lemon
almost
juice,
everything.
right?
Or your lemon juice, yeah.
Which is lemon juice concentrate. They suggest not to use fresh lemons.
I don't see that in here. What are you talking about now?
What kind
Well,
of-
that's, do you have it in, if you have it in here, if you have this here, that it's gonna have something describing this. But if you're talking about, hot packing and, some of the other things I'm talking about, like doing jelly with wax and not, I do jelly with wax because I'm
I've
cheap.
done that, I've done
And
that, it works.
if I wanna give you a jar of my jelly, I don't wanna give you my jar. So I save my old jars. Some people actually, let me show
Do
you.
jelly jars, yeah,
They take old jars,
yeah.
they take old jars that have the screw lids and they recan them. They do them again. I've never done that, but I have, so this is an old fashioned jelly jar. And this is really just to keep the wax clean. And, you know, it works just fine. I've never,
My sister used to do that, I loved her
yeah,
jelly.
so, and,
What
you
kind of
know,
jelly is that?
I think it's elderberry.
Ooh.
I'm not sure. I didn't write on this one. It'll be a surprise.
Cooktop.
They have a lot more stuff in like the tools that you can get. This one's a pretty basic one, and honestly, it's the only true essentials. So, any of my small mouth ones like this, or wide mouth, which are going to be a bigger size, both of those are able to fit this inside of it.
Yeah.
And so I can just take a ladle and ladle my hot boiling salsa and pour it straight inside of this, and it's not gonna spill. There's no way you're not gonna spill trying to put inside of that.
What kind of cooktops? What if you have one of those flat cooktops?
So glass tops
Yeah.
is one that's definitely not recommended to do canning on. Bill Kirker was just talking to me about how they actually purchased what would you call those?
It's
They go
kinda like a
outside.
2-burner camp
Oh.
stove, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
on
Yeah.
legs.
Yeah,
You hook it up to propane.
yeah.
I have been reading a little bit about the glass tops. I think it has to do with the weight of your canner. And because I was
Yeah,
looking at
it's gonna
this
crack
one
'em.
here, there are some glass tops that will take a canner, cause I was surprised, I didn't think that you could. But, like this one, with food in it adds an extra 60 pounds to it. So I have a glass top and I wouldn't put it on that, so I call it my canning kitchen, but what it was my mom's old kitchen, and it's in my basement, and I have a old gas
I'm curious the weight of
stove that has propane. Yeah, it's heavy. But this one, I love that one because you can do 14 quarts at the same time. And that's a lot less time when you're waiting. You know, the time, it doesn't double because I have 14 quarts. It stays the same because the steam's doing the same thing, you know, so, anyway.
Your 14 quarts, are they stacked on top of each other?
Yeah, you take one of those, this ring, you have one in the bottom, and then you put one in the middle, so.
That's one I haven't tried yet, is the double stacking, but I've
Yeah.
heard about it. I have a grill outdoors that has a little stove top. It's all like the natural gas. So I've had actually a water bath canner cooking outside and not have to heat up my kitchen. So some people actually choose, despite what they may have being okay inside the kitchen, to do that, because it just prevents all that hot cooking constantly being in your hot kitchen. Because of course, when do we grow everything? When it's hot.
Yeah.
Trying to think what else. Okay, so like some things are really important to get the bubbles out. This thing is to help do that, but a butter knife or anything else can do that too.
I
What
use a butter
she didn't realize was, I think you've never used one of these.
No.
So different recipes will tell you how full you get these. Another thing that I'm kind of curious whether you know this. These things actually, I've been taught, actually will be a measurement itself. So all these lines on here can actually be a reference. But this is a dual tool because it goes 1/4 an inch. So if I'm making jam, it might say, fill it up to 1/4 an inch. It's pretty stinking close. Well, that lines right up with the top
Yeah.
of this little ring here. The next one says 1/2 inch. That one's fairly common. Well, that goes to the second line here. And then other things will say to go down towards the bottom at 1 inch. Well, if you hit there, then it's 1 inch, and you go, oh, let me look at that. It goes right underneath that ring. So this actually kind of has a self-measuring thing, honestly, if you actually learn that little trick. But
Colleen is probably the most experienced canner here. What aren't we saying canner? I don't know, Colleen.
I am.
You are.
Well, I haven't really canned in the last 2 years a lot.
Yeah, but
I've
you've
just
been doing it since
burning
you were a child.
But, yeah, I've been,
What would you recommend for a beginner? What would you recommend for a beginner?
well, something like that bean soup is so easy to do.
But it's a pressure canner though, you have to use a pressure canner, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to use pressure canner.
But that sounds, I think I might try that. I have my grandmother's old pressure canner, I might.
it just depends
Dust
on
it
who
off.
you're talking to about whether it has a pressure can though, right?
Right.
So, interesting fact, I know somebody who's moved here from Australia, and she's never heard of a pressure canner. They don't sell pressure canners. And do they can in Australia? Oh yeah, they do. And it's not just Australia. America has made a big thing about pressure canners in the non-acid foods. And so again, with the rebel canning, the way they used to do it in the old days, et cetera, it's just cooking it longer. So you're doing your meats, yeah, you actually can put it in a water bath canner, but you're cooking it for 3 hours. I don't know if some of them sometimes go up to 4, but I know 3 hours definitely is one of them. But when you're putting a pressure canner, you're doing it, 90 minutes or something. This one would have been water bath canned. This is green beans, carrots, celery, cauliflower, spices, and such in vinegar and water mix. So this is pickled. So green beans are counted as one of those, you should pressure can them because they're low acid, unless you add an acid to them, so then pickled vegetables are safe. So my daughter and I love to eat those. And then here I've got Snapdragon's type of apple, unsweetened applesauce. It actually turns pink. My girl's not a big fan of it. So I still have to figure out the right apples to make them go, yay! Cinnamon, yay! Plain, This one is pickles. I actually have slices on top to try to get it as full as I possibly could while the rest is spears. One of the interesting fun facts is you want crispy pickles, right? I have yet to have succeeded with that. This is not one I will give to you proudly to go, yep, you're gonna love these. They're a little bit mushy. They're gonna work for my family. Yeah, we take out sometimes the part where the seeds are. It's the most mushiest part, and make the part of the meat that's closest to the skin be what we use in our sandwiches or next to our sandwich. And it's good enough that we're still gonna eat these, but they're not your at the store crunchy, crispy. However, there's a lot of different things we can use.
They
Yes,
have stuff you can buy to put in there to make them crispy.
right. So
Ask them all.
canners have made a product that you can buy that is going to be referred to as a crisper, and that's something that you can do. I can't remember what I may or may not have done in this. I can't remember. However, interestingly enough, grape leaves have natural tannins in them, and so actually one of the most common old days people knew this, just like the dying herbalist knowledge type of thing, is that you can put a grape leaf in here with this, and it will actually help keep the crispness.
You mean like from a grapevine, regular?
A regular grapevine grape leaf. So,
Hey, I wanna let you know one thing. You guys ever see a jar that's blue? That shows this? I want you to go, before you do them and use them, go on the internet and find out how this works. Because they could be anywhere from $500 to $500.
I know.
Really?
Don't use them
Blue
Well,
jars.
I
Sell
don't-
them and
I
buy
don't-
blue bottles.
I have blue jars, and I don't use them because I don't like, the food doesn't look very appetizing.
Yeah, cause they're blue.
Because they're blue, all the food's blue.
But you're
so-
rich, Kate. Well, I don't know, you better check it out, I have a couple, I better look it up.
I don't have that many of them. I just,
Here's a fun one that my mom actually taught me. This is a, you know those like humongous Nesco cookers you can like put your turkey in? Okay, they're humongous. That's the perfect thing to be able to use to try to cook down your tomato juice into making tomato sauce. This is a liner that goes on the inside.
yeah,
I
that's it.
used this last year so that I didn't have all that hard baked on, just on the edges tomato. So that was kind of an interesting little hack. My,
That's a good idea.
somebody else I know also, she said to spray Pam inside the Nesco cooker and it helps prevent the tomato from sticking really bad, cause you're doing hours of trying to let the water just kind of dissipate at a very slow, low 200, 250 degree temperature,
let me speak to that.
and they're shortcuts.
That, actually, this was a Mickey shortcut I heard her say years ago. So like, I like tomato sauce, spaghetti sauce, that's the
Yeah.
word. I like spaghetti sauce, I like to make spaghetti sauce, but it takes a long time to cook stuff down, and you're in the middle of canning season, everything is
Yeah.
about time.
Yeah.
So, what I've done is I cook it down till how long I can stand it to be cooked down, which isn't that long. Like, you know, for me, it's about a half an hour, that's it. And then I can it, and so it's tomato sauce, right?
Tomato juice.
Yeah. So then what I do is I put it, for every jar that I make, I buy a 6-ounce thing of paste. And so when I go to make spaghetti sauce, I dump that in there and I throw the spices in the last minute. So I can make spaghetti sauce in about 5 minutes, you know, so if the idea of doing spaghetti sauce is daunting or annoying to you, then there's that little shortcut.
And you have more too.
I'm also very impatient, so we, a lot of times instead of even like getting it to the juice phase, we pretty much just do stewed tomatoes without peppers.
Yeah.
And can it that way. And then when I open it, I do the same thing, a little can of paste to a larger can. I'll throw it in the food processor,
Yeah.
There you go.
and then it's great,
Yeah.
so that's a lot less time.
I just did that today.
You guys know what you're doing. Have we forgotten anything? You're a canner. Have we
Me?
forgot anything? No,
Or-
Nancy.
I water bath, I water bath everything,
Mhm.
and it's really not, with your pressure canner, you gotta watch it. With the water bath, you bring it up to a boil, and I turn it back to, I use electric, turn it back to like 7, maybe 15 minutes, and then keep turning it down till about 4 or 5. And then it keeps it rolling, rolling boil, set the timer, walk away, go back 3 hours later, take them out,
Voila.
Now, when you say everything, what do you mean everything? What do you do, what all do water bath can?
everything.
Beans,
So
green
you've done
beans?
meat products
And
and
our
all those
Amish
types of things
friends.
too.
They haven't killed anybody yet.
Yeah.
But my neighbor's still living.
You know, I saw on, I belong to, and I should tell you what they are. I have 3 groups that on Facebook that I belong to that are canning groups. But I just saw a picture this week of somebody doing 74 pints of something in one big, it looked like a old-fashioned metal bathtub. And they were doing it all at the same time. So, you know,
What did
this
they
is
have
just,
that
this
sitting
is
on?
just what, they had
Was
it
it
on,
open fire?
I don't, I don't know, I'm not sure if they had an open fire, but they did have I noticed, remember somebody in here
Probably
said
what
the
he's
grate,
talking
Yeah,
the grate that you take your grate off of your, out of your, it
Oven?
looked like the oven
Oh.
grate. But I don't know what was underneath it, I don't know what kind of fire they had.
those turkey fryers, you can boil a long time.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Nancy?
But do you know you can dry can flour, sugar, rice,
Well, tell us
cereal,
about that.
all these
Yeah,
things?
tell us about that.
Another night.
Emergency water. That's not dry can, that's very wet.
Dry can water.
But if I have the canner and it's not full, I'll put water in there and just suck it back, when it's done, suck it back in the corner.
Yeah, that's something we didn't mention, like, you gotta have in these canners, 6 jars going around, otherwise they jiggle. And you can put 7, and some of them, the pints you can put more in. But you gotta have a pretty good, you gotta have a good ring. And if your ring isn't tight enough, you don't want it so tight as they're jammed in there, they won't let you do that. But if you don't have them in there, tight. Something could get
space.
broke in
Yeah.
there, right? So what you do is just what Nancy said, you put a jar of something in there like water, or even if you fill it up and not even wanna can the water, you could fill it up in there, take up some space, so.
We've had 45 minutes already fly by. So obviously, we can sit there and go, all right, so I need to go out and go buy an official can. We obviously know we can water bath technically everything, and those of you that would say that officially, you're now called a rebel canner. Okay, so you have a pot, so guess what? You can have just about any pot. It's called a stock pot, they're nice and tall.
I love
Okay, so the reason why you have something at the bottom is just so that you don't end up breaking the jars from them going on to the direct heat that
Right.
this is immediately sitting on, okay? So this is ridiculously tall and it drives me nuts. I can basically do the pint jars in as well. I have to keep watching the water level when I do the quarts. So this has this, but you can see that hers
Just has a thin one.
is really thin.
Yeah.
So, saving money, you're sitting there going, okay, I wanna be able to do this stuff, I wanna be able to save money, and I don't wanna be spending tons of money. You have a stock pot already at home, it's tall enough that the water can go up over it. You can put a towel down inside the bottom of it, and that is your protection. What I learned, and I only learned the towel thing this year, is that you can take your rings. I had a whole bunch of rings sitting out, where are they at? You can even take your rings and you can sit them at the bottom. And then fill that up, and you have to be way more careful because you need to go like in between the rings is where you would set your jar. So it's much more easier for them to have a slight tilt, and you have to work on it just right, and you can have it nice and full. It does good. If you don't have them all super full and lots in there, that wiggle around room can end up happening, but the towel I don't think would do that as bad.
I was gonna ask, where did you get those little rack things?
They
Did
came-
yours come with
They
it?
come with it.
Where did you get yours to go in a stock pot?
Where did I get
Your little rack for
A
the
little
bottom.
insert in the stock
Your
pot.
insert.
this is not stock pot, this is canner.
Oh, that's an actual
Uh-huh.
can.
Yeah,
that
this
you
is
got- that
this
came
is like
with
the
it.
most classic like water bath canner. You
Yeah.
get everything, and they sell it at Walmart. It's just
Yeah, I love
this
them.
speckled ceramic type of a thing, so it has that
It comes
with
with-
it. But I have a stock pot at home that when I'm making my 12 pints to 24 pints worth of salsa, I fill that baby up. But if I'm not needing to use that particular pan, I could use that pan as a water bather, and I did. I've had this going inside the house, and I've had that stock pot, which is taller, which has been nice for the quart jars, cooking outside. So, one thing to process, I have a second kitchen downstairs. I can fit this one okay, but the microwave is so freaking low that this is it. Anything that's this tall, I wouldn't even clear the microwave. So those are all things to process in your own personal kitchen.
If you look at, this is the book that came with this one, but you see, they're all different. You know, everything's different. And the very first thing that I bought, it was this little pot back here, and it's just a water bath thing. In fact, it's not even a water bath thing. I think it's just like it has measurements on it to say how many quarts are in there, like if you're making sauce. It might be a sauce pot, I'm not exactly sure what it was, and I use it as a canner and just steal it from something else, you know, to do that, so, you don't have to get this baby, you could start with what you have and then
So
decide.
what's the wire thing under?
That can also go in the
That's
bottom.
the jar
Yeah.
joint.
Okay,
The,
so if you don't
is
have
that
as
one that
many
lifts
jars.
up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it have the handles in
Yeah.
it?
that's
the
handle.
So those ones are really snazzy. I wish I
Yeah.
had one of these, cause this one will actually go inside the canner. And then when you pull it out, then this part right here just grabs on up here and it's literally taking them all up out of the water and it sits inside of that. So
Cool.
those are nice, whereas mine's just sitting down inside and I just have to have that jar grabber to go down into the water and pull them out. I added on the piece of paper that I gave you guys, you have a front and back to one single piece of paper. I
Hey,
wrote
can
down
we get a
notes
piece of
in
paper?
there of some homesteaders that I have come to really, really like to learn more about and be inspired of, so when you're completely newbie, I have literally at 4 a.m. this morning, because yes, I was unfortunately awake with insomnia.
Oh, funny.
I came
She
across
made
an advertisement on Facebook,
Okay.
for a class on canning. And that lady is, if you look on the paper that says canning food storage, you go all the way down to the bottom, I have homestead YouTube channel types of things.
Yeah.
Right here I have written down,
Do you have any more of that?
I might need to print a few more extras.
Yeah,
I do have 2 more.
Jasmine, if you give me one, Karine kids printing and for next week, anybody didn't get one, how's that? Cause I didn't get one,
Your own mother.
and several people didn't get one.
Colleen and I have a
Cause I
couple
had
of.
two. One was single, one
Yeah,
was.
we'll get some for next week. There's more,
Places on
The-
Facebook.
where'd you get that?
There was a total of 3 together.
If you're interested in
There's
some
3.
places on Facebook, canning simple recipe food is one that I belong to. And then Canning Rebel, who knew? I just liked what they were doing. Canning, freezing, dehydrating, food preserving, and homesteading was another one. So,
Are you canning your voice?
I am. I'm gonna there, bring it out when I want.
Okay, now you were talking about homestead.
Right, so if you look on the very bottom of the page, it says Melissa K. Norris, 3 lines up below, it says homesteadingfamily.com. That lady's name is Carolyn, she's got 8 or 9 kids, her and her husband, they're full-blown homesteaders. She, right now, has a thing being advertised on Facebook, I just signed up for, and it's literally to give you 4 days of free how to can. And with that free how to can, I've already printed off my recipe that she's gonna teach me how to make. So this is to make roasted tomato soup with 3 different flavors. You get like Italian and a little more spicier option type versions of it. But she gave me like the list of what you need, and then she'll go through canning safety and how to can literally every single step of this particular recipe. But she, Carolyn at homesteadingfamily.com and Melissa K. Norris, they both have where you can pay to be able to get like 12 plus videos on canning in great detail that you can go reference anytime you want for your entire life. Whereas like the thing that I signed up for, it's 4 days long and it's available for 1 week. After that, it poof and it disappears.
Oh my.
So I have to watch it within this coming week, cause it starts August 1st, I believe she said.
Tomorrow.
And then, my mom really likes 3 Rivers Homestead, which I mentioned on here. Again, she's, I think, pregnant with her 9th baby. So they're full-blown homesteaders. They know tons of stuff. She's doing an August challenge, which I'm definitely intrigued by. That you just do a little bit of something every single day, or loosely every single day, whether it's harvesting some herbs from your garden and putting them up to dry, or you're using your dehydrator, or you're gonna can something, but just working at it not being the overwhelming quantity. It's doing just a little bit every day of some form of something. I thought that was intriguing. Rose Red Homestead is an older lady. She actually knows the science of stuff, and has worked at a college or in the science area and stuff. So she has one that I put in here, Annihilate Botulism, and she helps you understand exactly what botulism is and how to not be scared of canning, with doing stuff right in your canning to not have botulism be a concern. But all of these YouTubers, they teach you how to make bread. They'll teach you what Mike Glenn was teaching you, some more stuff about herbs medicinally used, and canning, all kinds of stuff. So they're really cool gems that you can just watch a YouTube video that you can pick out.
I have a question about botulism. If something would have botulism, would you know it?
Botulism is not something you can smell.
So you could,
So
okay.
you cannot help.
If it wasn't sealed.
On canned
Yeah,
tomatoes,
That's just it, you need to make sure it's sealed.
on canned tomatoes, if they have started to go bad, there will be a really dark ring around the top of the liquid inside.
Now, something can mold and not have botulism, but how do you know if it's actually botulism?
If you got a dark ring around the
dark
top of your
ring.
tomato sauce, don't open it and eat it.
That's botulism.
Yes.
Okay.
It's bad.
So the nice thing is, I did double check this because you and I talked about this, that you're sitting there going, okay, I'm a little freaked out. I want to can, but now I'm scared about botulism and stuff. The heat kills botulism. So I specifically looked it up. If you were to take something and get it to a full boil for 10 solid minutes, botulism is killed. It can't still be there.
Botulism is actually a bacteria, so if you boil it, it kills it.
Right. So.
You had a website that,
Oh, there's a older lady, she's, probably my age.
There's another lady, that's all right.
Her name's Mary's Nest, and
Oh,
she
yeah,
does
yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
kinds,
I
I
follow her,
love
yeah,
that
yeah.
lady.
Mhm.
She's
Mary's Nest.
Mary's Nest.
Yeah, she's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's on YouTube?
On YouTube.
Okay.
Got a couple different resources to get stuff like this, and I know this because the stores that I frequent, Rural King has pretty much everything you need to do
Yeah.
to do water about canning.
Yes.
You can get the canners, the jars, the lids, the whole 9 yards. You wanna get them now though, because if you wait about another month when canning season kicks off,
That's
it'll be
fine.
gone.
What is it?
Rural King.
Rural King.
Rural.
Remember the old Walmarts, like the Walmart in Grove City? Okay, that's Tractor and Supply. Rural King is a super Walmart.
And
You-
Tractor Supply.
Right. I mean, in comparison, so you Rural King, you go in and say, hey, I need this piece of equipment, they say, I'll order it in for you. You walk in Rural King and say, do you have that in green?
By the mall.
So,
Yeah.
they
But
have
there's one in
everything you need,
Butler.
water bath.
There's one in Butler and there's one in Franklin.
And
Is
somebody
it
told me
the
there's one
Butler?
over this way somewhere
There's
too.
that one in Franklin.
There's one in Franklin, there's one in Butler, and somebody told me that there was one over this way too. I think it might be right across the state line in Ohio.
Yeah, there is.
Oh, okay.
Hubbard maybe? I don't know.
Maybe.
Okay.
As far as the pressure canner, the big one that's sitting up there, Lehman's has those right now. Lehman's is a store that you wanna become
The
friendly with. if
American-
you- Yes.
Americana, American.
If you want to do some survival type stuff, because Lehman's caters to the Amish community.
Oh.
99% of the stuff they have does not require electricity. So you can get a wringer washer that you get one of your grandkids or one of your kids to stand there and crank the handle. I mean, they got all kinds of stuff like that. They have pressure canners over there. I just looked one up because my wife and I have been talking about going over to Lehman's. Their pressure canner, I think, don't quote me on it, it's like $419, $469, something like that for a 21 quart pressure canner like that one that's got the locks that you flip up and tighten down.
And how do you spell Lehman's? Is it-
Lehmans,
Okay,
apostrophe S. So it's Lehman, possessive.
yeah.
They used to send out catalogs, I haven't seen a Lehman's catalog in years because the advancement of the internet, so I'm not real sure how the Amish order stuff anymore, other than some of them have cell phones.
I was gonna say, they use their cell phone.
So, but like all of their equipment, their household appliances, you can get gas powered refrigerators and all kinds of stuff from them.
Have battery operated lamps.
Yeah, so they have the pressure canning stuff and they have all of the, we don't have any way to power this, but I still need to do it kind of stuff.
You can also look on the internet, like.
You might be able to find them on the internet.
I looked on my book, you know, if you would just know the name, like if you would look American or American something or other, whatever the title of it is on whichever kind you get, it'll go to whoever makes it, you know, and then, of course, then you have 15 choices, decide which one you want. Let me just say this, if you are looking at a canner that says it's so many quarts, it does not mean that it will do that many quarts.
No.
Like the one that I have there, I think it says 21 quarts, I think it does.
That's the capacity of the pan,
Yeah.
If you
not
would
how many
put
quarts of.
21 quarts
No.
of water in it, you would
Yeah.
fill it up, but it will only do 14 quarts. So
Right.
that's important to know,
Gotcha.
because you're thinking you're getting something bigger than
Right.
And when you're starting brand new, I would probably personally suggest smaller is better in general, cause you may only want to do 4 jars at a time rather than buying the one that you have to.
Depends if you have a garden.
Yeah,
Well,
and how
that's
big your
true.
garden is.
Yeah.
Like, I made a point in planting enough potatoes in my garden to give me a year's worth. That's a brand new thing that I've actually started doing, because I started going to the Amish locally and I could save a ton of money on potatoes. I prefer to buy organic potatoes. I'm still not buying organic from the Amish, but I'm buying 50-pound bags, so I
Yeah.
spent $26 and I bought 100 pounds of potatoes.
Mhm.
So I would go to the grocery store and I get a little 3-pound
Yeah.
bag of
Yes.
organic, and I'm spending
$7.99.
probably $6 per bag, and I
Yeah.
went, well, that was one meal, I have to buy more potatoes. But out in my garage, in my boxes that the peaches came in, my potatoes were perfectly fine, even though it got freezing inside of my garage. And once March comes, the eyes start growing, pop them off, and I still get a couple more months off of them, so I've got stuff from October all the way until May
Do
of
you
potatoes.
pack them in dry straw?
No,
Or
I
you just put
literally
them in a
put them
box?
in a box,
Okay.
and they're up on
That gives
a
them
metal
air.
shelf.
Here and there.
They're up on a metal shelf.
Okay,
I sometimes put rugs over them, to give just a few extra layers, or newspapers underneath of them, just to kind of have just a little more
Okay.
protection from some of this super intense cold.
right.
Keeps
But
them
I've
warm.
never had a mysterious mushy one or something where you went, it's frozen. I put some recently because it's so hot in my refrigerator and pulled out my potatoes, those were frozen and
Yeah.
they're rotting really fast because there's no good airflow.
Yeah.
Plastic
I
bags.
also, this isn't canning, but, carrots and beets, I put in wet sand in my basement in a tub, as long as they're not touching each other. And you have to cut the root part off. If you don't do that,
It'll
every
grow.
so often it grows. So I figured out, take a good hack of that off of there. So, but,
Tops?
yeah, and it lasts. It lasts all winter, you know. I think I had it until April.
And I've only just finally gotten my garden into my house. I've been in for 3 years last year. So with the first year, the year I think I did the most canning, I didn't have a garden outside. But I started asking around and I learned about the Amish auction that's just right behind the cheese factory. So I went there to the auction and I got pecks of green beans. I went to one of the local farmers' stands and I bought the peaches from them and got two boxes of those, things like that. And so buying in bulk, obviously we're not gonna eat it that fast. Buying in bulk and canning it is not gonna last and you're gonna get better prices. So that's where canning,
When,
in theory, can be saving money.
when is the Amish auction?
I think they're Thursdays.
Yeah, I haven't done that this year, so I would imagine they're already open, but I would say for sure in August they will be, and Yeah, there's a particular day or two that they're open, and so like, it would be something worthwhile to go up. They have, inside that place, they have a person in the back, and in that back room, the front of it, they'll have like a piece of paper you can just go up and go grab, and it will show you the schedule for the entire year. I'm trying to think if they're on Facebook. I think there might be something you can look it up online to find the auction.
Are they ever open on Saturdays?
They definitely have a very particular date. The Amish come in and sell all their stuff, and they sell them in boxes this big, and then they go down to the boxes this
I'm not gonna be
big,
able
and then
to
they're
go
gonna
on
get the
either
boxes
day, so.
of
I'm almost
canners.
positive it's on Thursdays.
There's lots of little Amish places though that have,
Yeah.
there's a place that I go to that has potatoes. You can buy 50 pounds of potatoes.
You have to wait till October.
Well, I'll tell you what, that has been a wealth of information.
Yeah, this one needed more than 30 minutes. I was like, well.
And just, I'm sure anybody can, if they have other questions, they can look you up and hunt you down.
And like I said, we're more than, well, fine to be able to let you, like, Kate and I available, like, you can come over to our house, you just have to be available that day while we're going, all right, produce is ready, it's gotta get done, so when it needs to get done, it has to get done.
Yep.
If you're available, you're more than welcome, we can, give you our phone number, you give us your phone number, we text you and go, it's time, you ready? You can come, you can learn with us, it's time to make salsa, it's time to make pickles, it's time to make our ham and split pieces.
Well, awesome, well, thank you very much. And next time, it's gonna be the trotters, we're gonna share on water, storage, safety, and sprouting, so.
Sprouting.
Yes.